Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Today I'm going to be sharing some funny or interesting stories behind my cosplay photos or their photo shoots as well. I certainly have quite a few stories to share, especially because I've been taking photos for like a decade now, something like that. So I've got a lot of different experiences happen, especially on location shoots. Starting off with what I believe is a classic, and that is talking about my Alice costume from Alice Madness Returns, but also my Illyria costume from World of Warcraft. Where we shot these two was at a really lovely local lake, really beautiful place, and it really changes with the seasons, but it has this wonderful little creek that goes through and you can kind of navigate your way down, and then I can stand on the rock and get some really cool photos. Now this photo here of my Alice costume, it's one of my favorite photos Dad has taken of me, but to get this shot I kind of made my way onto a rock and I managed to avoid the water, but he also had to do the same to kind of get that centered look, and yeah, okay, he definitely fell in the water. Basically, it's me in costume trying not to laugh, like I want to have a serious look for Alice, but here's Dad stumbling his way across the river, standing on a rock, thinking he's successful, and then definitely falling feet first into the water and just absolutely ruining his shoes and pants for that shoot. And then you might be like, hey, we've learnt our lesson, let's be a bit more careful. Nope, we literally did exactly the same thing with Illyria, again trying to keep a nice serious facial expression for the shoot, but no, here's Dad again trying to make his way to the center of the river and then finding a rock and then sliding on back in. So the fact that it happened twice, every time we go to this lake now, I can't help but joke about it. Next up we have my Oliver Queen cosplay, which I did quite a while ago now. This was definitely still in the early phase of doing location shoots. I really wanted to take something at night, but I didn't really know where to go. I live in the hills, so the city isn't quite as accessible, it's a bit more of a drive, but we thought, hey, why not try out one of the larger train stations near here, which is amazing. We've ended up doing so many different photo shoots there because you can still go there at night, but there's enough lighting to really give that industrial or city look. But anyway, the very first time we go there as Oliver, I've got my full costume on, I've got this like glowing kryptonite sword, and I've got his bow as well. Now the bow is actually made from, it must have been like a toy bow just made out of plastic, and I had just added a bunch of details and painted it and whatnot, and then my arrows are just like wooden dowels with a bit of foam on them as well. So we're just doing our thing, taking photos, and then eventually a police car shows up. Initially we just kind of continue on, and then they kind of specifically make their way towards us. At that point we do stop and have a quick chat with them, and they were really lovely. They were just like, oh, just wanted to check in, see what you're doing, oh, nice bow you got there. And here I am just like, oh, no, my bow it's a prop, it's fake, it's not dangerous, see, I can't even pull the string back, and showing them. The guy even ended up asking like who I was, and I said I was Green Arrow, and he was like, oh yeah, I know that one. So that was a really fun experience as well. This is a more recent one, but I did my Mihawk shoot at a beach. Luckily it wasn't too busy. I think I love shooting at the beach, but I always get a bit worried about everybody kind of looking at me. It's why I do go to forests a bit more often because there's not as many people. But anyway, in this shoot we were taking some poses, the wind was going, it was actually quite a lovely day, not too hot, but nice and overcast, so even lighting, just a little old lady walking down the sand, and she's with a little dog as well. Now the dog kind of is running around chasing after a bowl and eventually does make his way over to me. I think the funny thing about costumes is that, especially doing shoots in forests and reserves, the dogs always freak out because they're like, oh my god, that person, the shape is all weird, or I'm wearing full armor, and the dogs end up barking at me most of the time. But no, this one with my, I had my giant sword and the hat and the long flowing coat, but no, the puppy came up and kind of dropped his ball in front of me, and I'm like, oh, who am I to not throw this ball for the puppy? So I did indeed play fetch a little bit with the pup, and then the owner eventually kind of was calling for him and wandering back around, just the classic, oh hello, yes I know I look a little bit funny, but have a lovely day, and then we continued on with the shoot. But yes, I was very proud that the puppy wanted to play fetch with me and was not scared. I made my own original version of San from Princess Mononoke, and I really wanted to get some lovely photos, and I managed to work with one of my friends, Kiralee, and she took the most beautiful photos. And we went on a day where it wasn't raining, it was spitting a little bit, so it was definitely a cooler day. And then here I am in this, I mean, it was a sun costume, so I had the wolf pelt and I had all the different bits of jewelry and I had a bit of red kind of scattered throughout it. We got some wonderful photos, which, side note, I did actually get into the water at one point, and then I was having to squeeze the excess water out of my costume, but you know, you gotta do it for the photos, right? I had a great time. But anyway, the best part is when we were finishing up and kind of walking back, there was a mum and a little girl walking by, and I didn't hear it, but my friend started laughing, and then as we were out of earshot, she turned to me and was like, "Oh, that little girl just asked if you lived here," as in lived and came from the forest. And I just thought that was so perfect, because I certainly looked the part, but isn't that the dream, is to want little girls to think that I am part of the forest? Like, that was a very good compliment in my eyes. This one doesn't have a lot to do with a costume, but when I did my Kratos costume, which I wore to a Viking fair and I wore it to a convention, again, I knew I really wanted a really cool forest atmosphere to suit the games. We actually had this huge storm pass by last year where everything, like trees were falling down everywhere. It was honestly insane. And I would say maybe like a week or two after that, we went to the forest to take some photos. The weather had calmed down, but the forest we went to had those really long tall trees, and the place was just completely there were trees fallen everywhere. It wasn't destroyed as such, but it definitely, you could see the damage. All the usual paths we would walk were covered by trees and branches, and so many of them. And I actually got some really cool photos, mind you, but like the trees had fallen where the roots were just pulled out as well. And you know, there was dirt everywhere. And like, I was in costume, but I don't know, there was something a little bit more godly about how everything had just been ripped and torn apart. So it kind of fit Kratos really well. I mean, I really enjoyed the shoot for taking photos of Kratos, but I must admit, we spent a lot of the time just wandering around looking at all the damage just as much as we were taking photos. This is a good one. This is just me being an idiot. So a couple of Halloweens ago, I wanted to do kind of my spin on a Halloween jester from Critical Role. So I had this really cool kind of witchy star dress, and I really wanted to, first of all, take inspiration from like classic pin-up, like vintage pin-up looks that were based around Halloween, and I took a few of those poses and had a bit of fun with it. And I kind of wanted a specific feel for this look, so I have, in one of our lounge rooms, we have like this brick wall, so I wanted to use that as the backdrop. And then I wanted, I don't exactly know why I thought of this, but I thought, oh, it'd be cool to have like hay scattered around on the ground. And it did, it gave, you know, a great extra texture, and it really suited the brick, and I loved how the photos turned out. Alas, I am a little bit allergic to hay. It makes me like itchy and I sneeze a lot, and so yeah, I really didn't necessarily think a whole lot for this costume. So in between like every photo, I was like sneezing or I was itching, or it was just not the best experience. Like, I mean, ultimately it was worth it because I loved the outcome, but yeah, that was the last time I ever used hay in photos, that's for sure. Oh my gosh, this happens all the time. If I shoot somewhere where it's not quite as like secluded and it's a little bit more in the public eye, we have it's kind of like a manor, and you can go around the gardens and you can enter the house, and it's really lovely. And I thought it would be perfect to suit Dream there, because it certainly like gives me feels of like the manor, but also like Dream's landscape and all of that. And we went there on a reasonably warm day, so it meant all the tourists were out. Now, I'd say Dream is like a somewhat normal costume. Like, I did look a bit weird with the black hair and the twin coat, right? But whatever. But then, of course, I had his dang mask, which is just like, I love it, but it definitely does have more of that creepy, like, it does have a bit of a horror feel, which of course is the point. But here I am just kind of trying to hide the mask a little bit around me. You know, it is a pretty touristy place, so even if you don't live here, a lot of people who are visiting do come and go there. So all these poor tourists just walking around looking at me like, righto, and like everyone's fine, they're not going to say anything, but it's definitely, you can just, you know, you just feel a little bit awkward walking around like, yep, hello everyone, I'm dressed a bit funny, yep, just ignore the mask, yep, I'm just posing here with the camera, you know how it is. Anyway, the photos were great, I loved it. Didn't quite work up the courage to actually go inside the manor because you have to like pay to get in, and so it's a bit smaller and stuff. I don't even know if you can take photos in there, but even just walking in front of it around the gardens was great. But yes, we did get quite a few interesting stares. Ah yes, this is another case of me being a little bit silly, but sometimes what I'll do is when I'm planning a costume or what photo shoots I want to do, I do try and make it somewhat weather appropriate, especially nowadays that I don't deal with heat quite as well as I once did. But this was a couple years ago. I had just finished off my Speedy costume from Arrow, and yeah, it's like full leather, covered in stuff. It's a great costume, but it is very warm. I did decide I wanted to get photos done at golden hour, and we went to the top of the reserve, and it was fine, but to get that really beautiful sun, you know, it needed to be a clear day, which meant it was really hot. I was absolutely sweating in everything. I don't even know how I ended up surviving the costume. I think when I got home, I like instantly had to cold shower. I'm glad I did it because the photos were great, but I think looking back and nowadays I'm like, all right, if I want to do golden hour, make sure it's at least like a crispy cool day, so that way I'm not getting too heated. I did that recently with Umbreon, and that was fine because that's a reasonably warm costume, but it was a cool day, so I was fine. But yes, Speedy was very warm and it was not the best experience. Speaking of not the best experience, so I recently, Elden Ring is my life, we know this. If you've chatted to me at all, been on this channel at all, you know I love Elden Ring. I recently finished off a project and I decided to do Hyetta from Elden Ring as well as a version of Saint Trina. Great thing about these characters is that they're wearing really heavy like masks or blindfolds. A lot of these portraits I took myself, so what I essentially do is I set up the camera, have a little timer and a remote, and then I kind of focus it with the remote, making sure I'm in focus, and I frame the camera, click that, and then I wait for the countdown and take some pictures. Doing this blindfolded is really difficult. Basically what I ended up doing was framed everything nicely and was like, all right, this is where I'm standing. Just pray that I'm in focus, take the picture, and then what I would do is like after every like 10 or so pictures I just check to make sure I was actually centered, because what I kept doing was like moving to the side too much where suddenly the picture was quite off, or if I have a backdrop it looks a bit funny, so I had to play around with that a little bit. So I first did that with Hyetta. She's got the wraps around it, and that was kind of okay. I could see a little bit through it, but yeah, having all the wraps was a bit of a pain. And then I thought, you know, let's up myself, and I did it with Saint Trina. This one was extra difficult because I could see through a little bit of the black fabric. I essentially used a bunch of silver charms everywhere, and so tying it on, it was really not that comfortable. I had this like ridiculously long wig. I think it was like 1.8 meters maybe. It was so long, and then I had this bloody like crown centerpiece on my back, which was a whole other thing. I rushed this costume a little bit, so the structure isn't the best. So here I am trying to like blindfold and keep my wig, and I've got this thing falling back and forwards. I am genuinely surprised I got some good photos from this because it was a struggle to shoot it. If I ever wanted to wear it again, I'd have to make some serious changes. And like that being said, it really was a rush costume, and I only gave myself a couple days to kind of do it and shoot it. So I'm not surprised, but I am surprised that I got some good photos. I think these two are so funny because I didn't learn. I was like, cool, I'm gonna step it up and make it even harder for myself. I've learnt my lesson now. If I ever do something like that again, I'm gonna work in something different so I can actually function a bit better, but whew, that was fun. Then my last story, which is very fun. I recently did a bunch of original characters this year. I really wanted to kind of reuse a lot of bits and pieces I had, but also just get a bit creative with it. And I made a mermaid character called, or siren character rather, called Echo. I had this idea and I'd been wanting to do it for a really long time. Like, people do milk bath shoots where you have your bathtub, or some people even do it in like a blow-up pool or in a pool or whatever. Add a bit of milk so you kind of get this milky consistency. Sounds really weird, I know, but it does look very cool in the end. And I thought, I reckon I could do that. And then I thought, I reckon I could shoot that myself. So I filled up the tub, I got the camera ready. Please don't worry, nothing got damaged in the process. I was very careful not to wet any of the camera equipment. But I put up the tripod, got the camera, filled it in, was in kind of full costume and makeup. Luckily I wasn't wearing a wig, I was smart and used my own hair. But here I am. The photos turned out amazing and I'm so pleased, but the in-between shots were so funny because here I am with my remote, and like I got a core workout because I had to lie down and then get up and adjust and then lie down, and oh, it was so difficult. I had these white gloves on, so it made it even harder to work. So basically I had a towel nearby, so I would, angle it, dry my hands, use my little remote, hold that down, and then put that down next to me like in the soap holder, and then did it. And then just repeat for like an hour and a half. By the end of it, the water was getting cold and I was freezing. I had to have like a hot shower afterwards. I'm not gonna lie, like it was frustrating, but I think I was laughing more than anything because the whole time, like drenched in this like white dress and this makeup and, going up and down, what a ridiculous thing. Like, it was just so funny to me. Hey, it was a success in the end, so clearly I did something right. Either way, next time I do that, I'm definitely going to get someone to take the photos for me, so all I have to worry about is posing, and that's it. And that is my stories for today. I really hoped you enjoyed listening to them and maybe had a bit of a laugh. I'm sure I'll do a part 2 of this at some point. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!